Imagine being accused of a crime, not given a fair trial, and then sentenced to a punishment so gruesome that even death would seem merciful. A punishment designed not just to inflict pain, but to destroy your body and dignity in the most horrifying way possible. This was the fate of many women in medieval Europe. Their crime? Sometimes it was adultery. Other times it was something as vague as heresy or witchcraft. And their punishment? A device so cruel it was meant to tear them apart. The breast ripper, a cold metal claw designed to mutilate and punish women, often in public, as a warning to others, a brutal instrument of pain, humiliation, and control. But where did this horrifying device come from? And why was it used? The breast ripper wasn't just a tool of torture. It was a symbol of control, designed to strike fear into the hearts of women. Its origins can be traced back to medieval Europe, a time when justice was often brutal and punishment was meant to be as painful as possible. This device was primarily used during the Inquisition and witch trials, but it was also a favored tool for punishing women accused of adultery, blasphemy, abortion, and even resisting authority. In many cases, the accusation alone was enough. Evidence wasn't always necessary. If a woman was suspected of betraying her husband, defying societal norms, or simply angering the wrong people, she could face this horrifying fate. Authorities justified the use of the breast ripper as a way to punish immorality and deter other women from stepping out of line. It was a brutal reminder that a woman's body was not her own. It belonged to the laws and morals dictated by society. But the true horror of this punishment wasn't just in its purpose. It was in the way it was carried out. The breast ripper was not just a weapon of pain. It was a carefully designed tool of terror. Its structure was horrifyingly simple, yet devastatingly effective. Imagine a metal claw, shaped like a set of sharp iron pincers. Sometimes it had 4 curved prongs, resembling the talons of a beast. Other versions had serrated edges, designed to dig into flesh. Some were even heated in fire, making the pain unbearable. The process began with the accused woman being stripped of her clothing, exposing her completely to a crowd of onlookers. This was intentional. Humiliation was part of the punishment. She would then be tied or restrained, preventing any chance of escape. The torturer would take the breast ripper, sometimes glowing red-hot from fire, and clamp it onto her breast. At first, the prongs would dig into her flesh, piercing the skin. But this was just the beginning. With a sudden merciless pull, the torturer would rip away the flesh, often tearing through muscle and exposing bone. The pain was unimaginable. Many victims lost consciousness from sheer agony, only to be revived and tortured again. Some would bleed to death on the spot, while others were left with permanent disfigurement, if they were allowed to live. The breast ripper wasn't just a theoretical instrument of torture. It was used in real cases, leaving behind horrifying records of unimaginable suffering. While exact numbers are unknown, historical accounts suggest that this brutal device was used extensively during the Middle Ages and early modern period, particularly during the 15th century, the Inquisition and witch hunts across Europe. One of the most infamous periods for this punishment was the witch trials of the 16th and 17th centuries, when thousands of women were accused of sorcery and subjected to unspeakable torture. In many cases, these women were convicted based on little more than hearsay, superstition, or personal vendettas. Records from the time describe women accused of adultery and unnatural acts being sentenced to the breast ripper before being burned at the stake. These brutal public executions served as a grim warning to others. A woman accused of poisoning her husband was subjected to the breast ripper before being executed. Witnesses described the horrific wounds inflicted, which left her barely recognizable before her death. During this period, women accused of blasphemy or heresy were often tortured using devices like the breast ripper to extract the confessions. Many of these confessions were forced under extreme duress and pain, leading to further punishment or execution. The torture wasn't always done in secret. In some cases, it was a public event, meant to humiliate the victim and terrify others into obedience. Townspeople would gather to watch, reinforcing a culture of fear where no woman was safe from accusation. Even if a victim survived, she would be left with horrific scarring and disfigurement, making her an outcast in society. Many survivors were ostracized, deemed unfit for marriage, or left to die in poverty. The punishment extended beyond just physical pain. It destroyed a woman's place in her community. This wasn't just about justice, it was about control. The fear of such an agonizing fate kept women in line, preventing them from challenging authority, questioning religious doctrines, or defying societal norms. But as the world changed, and torture devices like the breast ripper became relics of the past, one question remains: how could such a barbaric punishment exist for so long? By the 18th and 19th centuries, Europe was beginning to move away from the brutal methods of medieval justice. The Enlightenment era brought with it new ideas about human rights, legal fairness, and due process. Public executions and torture, once seen as necessary deterrents, were increasingly viewed as barbaric and unjust. The breast ripper wasn't just a tool of physical torture. It was a weapon of psychological warfare. The mere threat of such a punishment was enough to keep women in line, reinforcing a system where fear ruled over fairness. Women in medieval society already had limited rights, but punishments like this ensured they remained silent, obedient, and submissive. It sent a brutal message: step out of line, and you'll suffer in ways too horrific to imagine. For many victims, the suffering didn't end with the torture itself. If they survived, they were permanently disfigured, often abandoned by their families, and left to live as outcasts. In a society where a woman's worth was often tied to her physical appearance and ability to bear children, the breast ripper effectively destroyed not just the body, but also the future of its victims. The breast ripper stands as one of the most horrific punishments ever inflicted upon women, not just because of its physical brutality, but because of what it represents: a system that used fear to control and silence half the population.